me and my older sibling, staying at home. Small town in Ohio with less people in it than my mom's graduating class of the city we came from. Sibling is grounded, both the house's phone and their own phone are locked in my dad's gun safe, which neither of us had the combination to. Reason for being grounded is something silly and arbitrary, can't remember quite why. Grandparents live down the street, great-grandmother lives in a small house they built her on the property so that she could be independent but they would still be close by. My parents said that they were going to go check on my great-grandmother, as my grandparents were out of town that day, and then they would come back and we would order pizza. That sounded good enough to 7-year-old me and 14-15-year-old sibling. We played video games for a while, starting to get hungry and wonder when my parents would be back. After about 2 hours of them being gone, I heard a knock on the door. I went downstairs, pretty excited for the food, and my sibling followed a bit behind after saving the game. Walked up to the door, which had a large window in it, and not my parents. Very tall, lean, white guy with some short black hair and scruffy facial hair. 24-25 years old. More jarring because everyone knew everyone in this small town, and I had no clue who this was. I held up my finger like, 1 second, and closed the curtain. I turned to see my sibling staring at the door, in a bit of disbelief because they had seen the person too. In seconds, knocking turned to pounding turned to shaking and rattling our doorknob. Terrified and with no way to call our parents, my sibling grabbed my hand and ran me into the kitchen. They grabbed a knife and I distinctly remember it breaking in their hand, and them grabbing a different one. We hid in the laundry room and held each other, hearing banging, pounding, and about 5 minutes that felt like hours later, the front door opened. One thing about my sibling is they have always been ready to protect me at a moment's notice, and they were ready to jump up with their shitty kitchen knife and defend me the moment the dude was upon us. Instead, my mom rounded the corner, holding 2 pizza boxes and wondering why her 2 kids were in a crumpled heap of tears on the floor. We both stood up and ran to tell her about the man outside, but we were met with laughter. My dad was outside talking to him. She said that he was asking about buying a broken-down car that had been in our driveway for a few months, and was apparently a mechanic. My mom felt terrible, but found the situation a bit amusing. Apparently she went out and told the man, and he said he felt bad for scaring us. We were given hugs and promised that the phones wouldn't be locked away while they were gone again, and spent the evening eating our pizza with choked sobs. But something still bothers me, even though it didn't as a child. Something that I just never thought about. Why would an adult grown man pound on the door like that, shake the handle, try his very damnedest to get into a house where either the parents weren't home, or the youngest child had held up their finger like, 1 second, to go get their parent? Why would someone want to talk about a car that didn't have any sort of "for sale" sign on it, so late at night? 9:10 p.m. I'd like your opinion on if I was actually in danger that night, as my parents brushed it off so lightly. But something in my gut, being an adult now, that's not the way adults act. And I don't think that I would want to know what would have happened had my parents not come home when they did. When I first moved out of the apartment I lived in with my mom and little sister, I had found this rundown little house that had been split into 2 apartments, upstairs, downstairs. A newer row of apartments ran behind it. I moved in with a friend, Linda, that also worked with me at Tower Record. Everybody was really into music and cool and pretty laid back. This was in Hawaii, and it seemed like everybody was pretty laid back. Not true, but it seemed like it. I was really crushing on one of the guys, Sal, and she knew, but was dating Marco. She and Marco were one of those couples who were either always locked in a passionate embrace, or fighting like they were going to kill each other. Coming back from a concert with them once, they were fighting so viciously that at a stoplight I jumped out of the car and walked the rest of the way. After months of mooning over Sal, leaving him secret love notes, I was such a girl, and spending as much time as I could around him, Sal and I had one date that ended with him going to spend the night, and I was thrilled beyond belief, but after dropping me off and going to look for parking, he apparently couldn't find anything, so just went home. Now, parking was a disaster in our neighborhood, but he broke my heart when he didn't come. I confided to Linda, and she let me cry on her shoulder. I gave Sal the cold shoulder at work and barely ever spoke to him again. Then she broke up with Marco, and started dating Sal. The first night he stayed over, apparently parking wasn't so bad those nights. I was shocked that she would be so cold about it, knowing how I felt. The apartment was tiny, and our bedroom doors were about 3 feet apart, and I ended up blasting my music late into the night because I could hear everything. She and I mutually decided she should move out. I had to find a new roommate, and one day an old friend from school came into the store. We started talking, and Jeff moved in a few days later. Linda had been inconsiderate. Jeff was a nightmare. Never did the dishes. Never changed a toilet paper roll. Never swept, vacuumed, put things away. He would make a sandwich and leave everything out, mayo jar lid off, bread scattered across the counter, refrigerator still open. He left peanut butter fingerprints all over the cabinets. What kind of grown man does that? Then one morning I wake up. He's already gone to his job. I open my bedroom door and the carpet in the tiny hall squished. I looked in the bathroom. The toilet had overflowed. And he used every towel in the apartment to sop up water, then left them sitting on floor, soaking wet. He used the blanket from his room. There was literally nothing dry, and the water had soaked into the carpeting in the hall, and through the walk-in closet of his bedroom, and into the room itself. I freaked the fuck out. I called the landlord. He said he would call the plumber and would be there as soon as he could. I called the store to tell them what happened. They told me to come in. Now. Lots of sympathy there. The shower was fine, so I took a fast shower, and I had to pee in the tub. I had to use my terry cloth robe to dry off. The plumber got there while I was trying to get all the soaked towels and blanket into a bath. He went into the empty downstairs apartment first, then called me down. The water was pouring out of the ceiling like a waterfall, and the empty apartment was flooded. He looked at me, then indicated the ceiling. It's the pipes. They should have been replaced years ago, but they've just been patched. An old pipe had bent or twisted or something, blocking the water, causing it to back up and explode our toilet, and the resulting pressure release burst the pipes under the floor, which was the ceiling for the ground floor apartment, hence the waterfall. Then he got really serious and told me to not let the landlord tell me anything otherwise. The landlord came. He took over with the plumber. I went upstairs to deal with what Jeff had left me to deal with. I never made it into work. A few hours later Jeff came home and said, "Oh, yeah, I was going to tell you, but I had to get to work." "You jackass. You left me to find this." I missed a whole day of work. There was nothing dry. The downstairs apartment is flooded. You didn't tell anybody. You didn't tell anybody. This outburst was rare for me, especially then. Nowadays my rage would have been so great that my screaming would set him on fire. Then he asked if we could use the toilet. I told him to move out. The plumber left us a wet vac and we started soaking the water out of the carpet in his closet and bedroom. Or, actually, I did. He would half-ass it, then go out, and if I wanted to get rid of the mustiness, I had to keep doing it. The landlord tried to charge me for everything, because he said the plumber told him a tampon had plugged the toilet. I shakily stood my ground and said no, he didn't, because he had told me what caused it, and it wasn't a tampon. The landlord shut up about it. For a week I peed in the shower, and either used the gas station down the street, or went into work early enough to partake of the facilities for the other stuff. The toilet got replaced. They gutted the downstairs. Jeff moved out. The landlord refused to replace the carpeting, and despite the wet vac and massive fan running night and day, the apartment forever after smelled musty and mildewy. I gave my notice a month after that and moved back home until I could figure something out. Oh, and the landlord first tried to keep my deposit, because of damages, and also tried to charge me what he said it cost him to advertise for a new tenant. I got a copy of tenant's rights and threatened to turn him in. I got all my money back. I moved in with another coworker who started bringing home a guy I couldn't stand, and since we were sharing a one-bedroom, I either had to stay in the room while they had the TV and the stereo and the kitchen, or I had to sleep on the couch. Fuck that noise, I moved out and into a tiny converted garage next door to an auntie, who left me alone. I barely had room to move around, but I was alone and happy. When I moved to Los Angeles, I tried the roommate thing, but got kicked out for being too boring. I rented a studio and loved being alone, but the rent went up and I ended up moving in with roommates again. Disaster, one stole from me, the other started stalking a woman who I warned, and he began sabotaging me in revenge. After losing a job because he erased my answering machine, and having to replace the tires on my scooter because he stabbed them, I moved out. I gave up everything. I had no car, no social life. I didn't party or buy clothes or eat out or go to bars or trips to Vegas with friends, but I had enough to pay rent on my own and I liked it that way. I could barely stand letting my husband move in, but he at least came with benefits. I stayed at the Reno Hilton for a few nights and after checking out we decided we wanted to stay one more night in. But our hotel was sold out so we drove around a bit and went to some Motel 8 or something similar. It really didn't matter, our plan was to just see the town a little more, go back, sleep and leave early. Anyway we check in and head to our room. This was early evening, still light out. We're walking down the hallway and the hair on the back of my neck stands up. That's weird. I worked in the hotel industry at this time in my life and am used to being in these establishments. I get to my room and as I walk in a very strong gust of wind blows down on me from above the door and it was a strange cold gust of air. I thought it was one of those bug blowers or whatever that some stores have. I thought it was weird for one to be in an individual hotel room. So I walked in and set my stuff on the bed. My girlfriend follows me. I felt uneasy, very uneasy, but said nothing. She sits on the edge of the other bed, and not even 10 seconds pass when she says, "I am not staying in this room, it's scaring the shit out of me." I asked her why. She was like, "Ick, but something is wrong." I felt it too, and I peered into the closet/bathroom area and it was very dark and I had no desire to even go near it. Then I glanced up above the door to see what caused that huge rush of air to blow, and there was nothing there. I picked up my stuff and told her let's go, let's get the hell out of here. I've never been scared entering a room before, but that room scared the shit out of me, and her. We went back to the front desk to check out and the clerk just slightly nodded his head and gave us our money back, didn't ask for an explanation or give us a hard time. That made it seem even more strange to me. If he knew the place was creepy, or I thought about it later, Maybe he had someone waiting in the room for unsuspecting guests. I really cannot explain the overwhelming feeling of needing to just leave not only that room but the entire place at that. I later asked my GF if she felt that gust of air when we walked into the room, and she said no, but she did feel weird and scared as soon as she walked in, but didn't want to say anything to me, until it was overwhelming, just a few seconds later. I wish I had a conclusion to this story. But I didn't wait around long enough to find out what it was, but I can definitely say something very evil was lurking in that room that day. Whether it was a bad person or bad spirits, I know we avoided a bad situation by immediately leaving. We were pretty young, about 1920s at the time. This happened in November 2003, when we stopped for the night at the village of Hartley Vale in the Blue Mountains, New South Wales, Australia. We stayed at the Comet Inn, a historic place dating back to the early settler days when the shale mines were still open during the 1800s. After dinner at the pub, we went to our room, which was on the first floor, up the short flight of stairs and around the corner to the left. When we entered the room, the first thing we saw was a Victorian-style lacy wedding gown that hung on one. The room was furnished with ornate dark wood furniture from the colonial days. The bed was very high, and I could have done with a ladder climbing onto the mattress. I also had to squeeze past a dresser with a tall mirror to reach the bed and be careful not knock off the porcelain knickknacks, or the vintage-style brass touch sensor lamp. My husband fell asleep at once. But I remained awake for a while. I had come down with a stomach bug, and soon I had to get up again, and head for the bathroom. It was a tricky process, with thick curtains at the windows making the room pitch black. I fumbled around for the lamp, hoping I didn't break anything in the process. "Where's the stupid light?" I muttered irritably to myself. A silver-green glow appeared near at hand. I thought with relief, "Oh goody, here's the lamp." I tapped the lamp once more to brighten the light, proceeded to do what I needed, and climbed back into bed. My forehead was clammy and I felt thoroughly miserable. I grumbled to my husband, "I don't feel so good." He slept on, oblivious. I felt too weak to even raise my hand to push aside a strand of hair across my brow, so I just feebly tried to blow it off. Then, I felt a breeze pass over my brow, stirring my hair. It was barely a wisp of air. I thought someone whispered to me, there. Ha! The room was too dark to even see my hand before me. Probably my imagination, but comforted anyway, I was finally able to sleep. The next thing I knew, my husband was up and about, getting dressed. Still feeling seedy, I touched the lamp and realized that the light was amber yellow and not silver green. I played around with the different settings on the lamp by tapping it several times in a row. Tap, dim light, tap, brighter light, tap, full light, tap, light off. Bemused, my husband asked me, "What are you doing?" I replied, puzzled, "The light's the wrong color." I told him about the silver-green glow and wondered if I could have seen a street light from across the road or a passing car. But my husband pointed out that no light could be seen from the street when the blackout curtains had been drawn. Furthermore, there were no street lights outside the inn or across the road. We were still discussing the mysterious light at the breakfast table. The couple who ran the inn exchanged strange looks when they heard our story. After some coaxing, they told us that our room had belonged to a young wife who had lived in the house during the 1800s. She had tragically died during childbirth in that very bed. It was her wedding gown hanging up in the room. Other guests in the past have experienced strange things in the room. An Australian sporting celebrity had once spent the night there while he was filming a fishing show in the area. He was woken up when the foot of the bed was shaken violently. Although booked in for a few nights, he hurriedly packed his bags and escaped as soon as he. It still seems to me that a cool hand had gently brushed my damp hair back off my forehead. I suppose it could have been my fevered imagination. But it's reassuring to think that someone gave me comfort when I was feeling ill. The Comet Inn is still there if you want to spend the night. Just ask for the bride's room.